Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar, Supply Chain Management for Circular Economy in Latin America. I am your host, Sam Boduk, Account Manager here at EarthShift Global, and we are very fortunate today to be featuring Bart van Hoof, a professor of industrial ecology, corporate environmental strategy, and sustainable supply chain management at Universidad de los Andes in Bogota, Colombia. His research and teaching interests are focused on dissemination of environmental management practices in industrial and agri-food systems in emerging markets. Today's webinar, led by Professor Van Hoof, will highlight the innovative Red SCAR program's key features, benefits obtained by participating firms, and lessons learned about methodologies to disseminate circular economy tools in supply chains within emerging markets. Without further ado, I am excited to welcome Professor Van Hoof.
Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you, EarthShift, for this opportunity to share experience where I've worked already on, I think, more than half of my life, not only me, with a whole group of people, among them actually professionals, consultants from EarthShift, like Jose Miguel Hernandez, who is also joining this web seminar. This is work, this is more applied work, but I will add some analytic, more academic ideas connected to this experience. And as Sam introduced, it's about supply chain management mechanisms to disseminate circular economy practices in networks of firms in Colombia. And REDESCAR is the name of a program we worked together with the environmental authority CAR in Colombia for about 6 years. So as the agenda, we will have a 40-minute presentation where we will address basically 3 questions. This is a short one, just an introduction on why sustainable supply in Latin America, actually, and give some thoughts about that. That's more the context, how to scale sustainable supply, and that will address the case of REDESCAR, our experience on the major supply or major scale supply chain program. And then in the end, we will have some reflections on lessons learned of these experiences. In the last 20 minutes, we will have questions and discussion around these topics. I thank you all for assisting, and let's go for the first question. Our first question: why sustainable supply in Latin America in particular? If we look to Latin America as a laboratory for sustainable supply research and practice, if we look to resource availability and resource scarcity and the sustainable use of these, Latin America plays an important role in the coming decades, both for climate change mitigation, because even when the energy use in Latin America is much lower than OECD countries, surface and for reforestation as global strategic ecoregions are located in the region, such as, of course, the Amazon, but also much more systems as we have, for example, also in Colombia, in the Pacific region, we have unique rainforests and mountain ranges, which are very important for climate change mitigation and biodiversity conservation. So Latin America, aside environmental assets, has also it suffers social around the opportunity for global firms to work with their Latin American suppliers is an opportunity of the circular economy. And if we look to supply chain participation of Latin American firms in global supply chain, this graph shows that it's especially focused on the first mile of many global supply chains. It means Latin American countries and firms provide often resources, basic primary resources in mining, oil, but also in agri-food systems. So Latin America is a player in the first mile of global supply chains. And if we look, it still has an emerging participation in global supply chain. This is a graph that shows connections of global supply chain, and we see how from US and from Western Europe the connections are built, and the density in this is a picture of the global map, and we can see that the density along Latin America is still emerging, with exception of Mexico, which in the last 20 years, due to the NAFTA agreement, has increased a lot. So why sustainable supply is relevant in Latin America? It's because Latin America is very rich in natural resources, has a lot of social segregation. So value added of sustainability initiatives are very high. So this is like a first thought on this first question on why sustainable supply in Latin America. And now, thinking on this, in Colombia, we started off this innovative program many years ago, almost 20 years ago. That was our the first one, how to scale up circular economy related practices, how in a significant group of firms, how to contribute to the transition towards a more efficient resource use in firms. And that's with this thought in mind, in 2013, we initiated with the environmental authority of the Bogota region this program of RedScar. And I will share the features of this program, and based on this empirical experience, we will do some reflections on how this mechanism works. RedScar, really, this is a bit of the context of RedScar, emerges as a model to scale up sustainable productive transformation in value change. Wait, sorry. And the context in Colombia and as in other neighboring countries, there is on a policy level, since the end of the 90s, we have a national policy on cleaner production. Then in 2010, we had a national policy on sustainable production and consumption. And currently in 2019, the Colombian government released a national strategy of circular economy. So here we have a tradition of preventive-oriented public policies on the country level. In this topic, Colombia is a front runner, but also in Mexico, Peru, and Brazil, Uruguay, similar policies are developed in more or less the same time period. On the meso level, on the value chain level, we have rather disconnected supply chain. Supply chain relationships are mainly based on negotiation of price, and really supplier development is still an emerging topic. Small and medium-sized enterprises make up the larger source of companies in the region, where costly and low impact, where improvement of environmental performance is often seen as a costly undertaking. So since capacity of environmental authorities are low to do enforcement of environmental law. So the environmental authority of Cundinamarca, the region around Bogota, was looking for a low-cost, high-impact mechanism to reach out to small and medium-sized enterprises. most of the efforts so far worked upon to improve environmental and performance of companies have been costly and low impact. Just to say that typically the technical assistance programs, often financed by development banks, have low adoption rates of less than 20%. And that's found in all over the region. And that also connects a bit to uptake levels of similar programs in Asia. So to say, at the micro level, there is a low adoption of sustainability practices in SMEs, and this connects also to low levels of productivity and competitiveness. What, on the other hand, is a low-hanging fruit for improvement. Many of the small and medium-sized enterprises have still outdated technology, which opens up opportunities for improvement. So in this context, the context where there is a tradition of preventive-oriented public policy, where existing mechanisms of reaching out to small and medium-sized enterprises has been costly and relatively low impact, where companies see environmental performance improvement as a cost, and where there is low productivity. This is the context where Redescar started to emerge. And so Redescar, this is the design of Redescar. Redescar was organized in a collaboration. This is a kind of triple helix collaboration among the environmental agency. This was the CAR. They are the environmental authority implementing environmental policy in the region of Bogota. And their role was to finance the program, to communicate the outcomes, and to recognize improvement of the firms. And they also participated in selected the supply networks. From the University of Los Andes, from the School of Management, we developed this supply chain, sustainable supply chain based methodology. We trained service centers in this methodology, and we did all the follow-up, including academic research on the outroll of this program. The idea of this was as such. We invited the program managers, invited anchor companies to reach out to their suppliers as an effective way of getting them aboard. Instead of negotiating one by one with each small and medium-sized enterprises, we negotiated with an anchor company that at this turn invited the suppliers. So we had an advantage in bringing the companies in. With the low capacity of the environmental authority, it's very easy. Firms might very easy stay unnoticed and not participate in programs. So our thought was, if we have a big client inviting their suppliers, company will respond better. And that in practice worked out. So the anchor companies, different anchor companies, some national larger companies, and other part of global corporations, invited local suppliers to participate in the program. The program itself consisted in in 8 workshops where people were trained by learning by doing methodology to design and implement circular economy related strategies within their operations and develop also symbiotic products. We will get into this later. And of course, the anchor company also helped with the follow-up of the suppliers and workshop logistics. Workshops, this training mechanism was held within the installations, the physical installation of the anchor company. And this was very important because it helped to generate connection beyond commercial relationship among small and medium-sized enterprises and these anchor firms. In order to scale the program and to scale the program, we trained from the university service centers, diverse service centers, in this methodology, in the workshop cycle, to be able to facilitate these processes and to deliver projects and to deliver the projects. So in this case, in Redesca, we had 5 service centers which were built in other local universities with connection in the region, and their task was to multiply the Redis methodology, and that consisted in workshop facilitation and site visits. And then we had a group, a network of small and medium-sized enterprises, most of them suppliers of those anchor firms. And what they did, they really did the job. They they trained their personnel, and they designed on the job circular economy projects. So this was like the operational structure of the program of the operation of Redis. So it's a typical, as it's called in academic terms, a triple helix collaborative scheme where public agencies such as CAR, private industry such as the anchor companies, and academia such as Los Andes work together and create all together a kind of community of practice. In this structure, the environmental authority didn't mix in the development process itself. It only participated as on a higher level on the strategic decisions in the program and on the finance of the program, but they didn't, and at the end in the communication of the program. But during the process, and they didn't mix into individual firm or information on individual firms. So that was a setup of a community, would grow out as a community of practice based on a triple helix to disseminate circular economy practices through supply chain configurations. That was like the idea, the idea of Redesca. And how did it work? So the Redesca methodology had 3 main dimensions. One was a strategy of change. The strategy of change were built around circular economy models, such as cleaner production, industrial symbiosis, and integrated water management. Those were like the specific, more technical topics, and they are accumulative in terms of complexity. We picked cleaner production as a door opener of having improvements of operational processes within the boundaries of the firm. And so this is as a first step to recognize cost savings and environmental improvement to open up the door. If companies advances and start to believe in the community and Bart become active part of the community, they open up and their learning advanced, they open up to more complex projects based on industrial symbiosis, and they discovered the advantages of being able to collaborate with their anchor company beyond their commercial transaction, and also a lot of collaboration emerged among suppliers. And actually, in more advanced stages, we mixed supply chain groups more on the regional level, and completely new projects emerged based on industrial symbiosis, different types of industrial symbiosis, as we will see later on. And same happened with integrated water management. So the strategy of change was all connected to circular economy innovation models. To do this, the intervention method was done by learning by doing. Learning by doing as a method, as a transdisciplinary method, where we train people, but have them self-develop projects on applied issues within their firms or among their firms. And as universities, as service centers, we facilitated this process. As in Colombia and in other countries of the region, we have this symmetry in power relationships, which you always have in supply chains, there is also a lot of mistrust among the firms. So the role of the service centers, the university as independent agents, helped to build, to strengthen the collaboration among the firms and to create trust among the companies. And the third element of the method was the network collaboration. This was all set up as a network. All the companies used a singular methodology with singular indicators, so we can accumulate results and communicate results as a network. We went beyond the individual success of the company. This was built around the network. So Redescar, in 6 years, we had about 40 supply chains with over 600 companies. So we had about 40 supply chains, all around 15 companies of a group of 600 companies. So that built up a critical mass of firms being part of this community of practice and participating in network collaborations. And very original network collaborations came along among companies that have never had relationships before. I will show you the cases later. And this methodology, where was it aiming at? First, of course, the low-hanging fruits of economic savings. That was to open the door to the companies to start off working on this, and clear environmental benefits on water, on raw materials, and on energy savings. And of course, and a very important outcome is the organizational learning. Capacity building of individuals working in the firms, but also capacity building within the firm, within the organization, and among firms. Collaboration capacity, we call this. So we also worked on collaboration. It was a generalized method. It's a generalized methodology that applies, that's not connected to a specific sector, that applies to different types of companies. Here we had firms from small agriculture to raw material suppliers to processors, also Coca-Cola, FEMSA, a bottler or a big cheese company participated. So we had all type, from construction material, cosmetics. We had a wide range of all type of industrial sectors, and also a wide range of different types of company sizes. In the process, we invited generally two persons, two representatives of each firm, represented by a technical, by some maintenance engineer or production manager, and more an administrative one, such as, for example, a more commercial manager or a plant manager who participated and who were in charge of designing their project. The suppliers participated in the different parts of the life cycle analysis and in different villages and municipalities around Bogota. So what have been achieved? What have been outcomes of this program? And that's what I will show you this by illustrating some examples on this circular economy related innovation models. So the first one is the cleaner production, which is the standard cleaner production of doing more with less. That is existing for decades. That's a concept, but we always ask why, if it's so profitable, why not all companies implement it? And that's what we disseminated in this program. So companies design projects around best practices, around energy efficiency, by changing lighting systems or better use of refrigeration. A lot of flour companies who use a lot of refrigeration participated and optimized their energy use or their use of illumination, material recycling, and efficient water use. That were like the best practices. We had also process redesigns, more complex waste use and management, reduction of production waste, for example, in construction material producer and replacement of materials. Also technological innovation in renovation, new technologies, or installation of renewable energy sources and other technological innovations. As we used a singular methodology with indicators and measurements, and that was part of the mechanism, of the trainer mechanism, we could calculate and summarize the savings on a project level, on a company level, on the supply chain level, and on the program level. So here you can see the savings we had. This is data of 447 companies. There were average paybacks of almost a year. Here you can see water savings. That was of the whole program, and we used yardsticks to communicate this. So you can see that Redescar, more or less in 6 year time, had environmental impact savings of a municipality of around 40,000 people. So that's the impact of the program. And here you can see also we used all those indicators, and this work on communicating indicators was very accumulated indicators was very important to maintain the community of practice going, and that's a very important input and feedback to the community of practice and make this grow, because it becomes significant, and companies see that this is beyond their own individual effort, and when they work together, and it generates trust. If they see other companies doing this, they decide to implement. So we found here implementation rates much higher than in the traditional schemes, where as I said in the beginning of my presentation, it's about 20% of implementation, while we reached out to 70% of implementation of design projects. The type of projects were typically cleaner production projects comparable with traditional technical assistance experiences. In industrial symbiosis, those are more complex projects. Those are more complex projects because it requires negotiation and collaboration among two or more firms, and often to collaboration with firms that are not that haven't had relationships before. If we work in supply chain, we make use of existing social capital among through a commercial relationship among a supplier and a client. In this case, in symbiosis, they are not necessarily suppliers, or they don't know each other and start to collaborate because they are located close together and find opportunities of collaboration. And there were different ways of collaboration. One was shared infrastructure. For example, three companies, Coca-Cola, a dairy company, and a cosmetic company, they shared investment in a common water source, which we can call ecological infrastructure. But there were also firms that started to exchange waste streams. For example, a huge manufacturer of toilets and ceramic construction materials with high levels of production waste established a symbiosis with a cement mill, which was within a range of a kilometer. It was actually a neighbor, and they started to move large amounts to exchange large amount of materials. The production waste of the ceramic firm was a raw material, a filler of the cement plant. So instead of sending this production waste to a landfill, this became a raw material for their neighbor. So this is our but we had also other, for example, a a coffee restaurant, the Juan Valdez coffee restaurant chain. They produce a large amount of coffee sludge as a residual of their cafes. And in these programs, they connected with an egg producer, a large industrial egg producer, who have an issue with smells of their operations, especially when they are located close to urban areas. And the coffee sludge worked as an absorber of the smell of the egg firm in the egg production. So and afterwards, after it's used, it was also compatible with the composting of the chicken manure, which is used as a fertilizer. So those Juan Valdez started the symbiosis with an industrial egg producer, which was a completely new relationship. They have never thought that they would work together, but through these programs, they first worked with their value chain, with their suppliers in earlier stages in cleaner production, and then they, in a second stage, they met to develop within the symbiosis model their symbiotic projects. And actually, as we can see, even these are less projects and less firms involved. This is a smaller scale, but on average, projects are much bigger in terms of economic savings, but also in terms of environmental benefits. And then we had, so here you can see some of the other examples. For example, the tents of the trucks were used in big farms for composting sites, joint management of sludge from waste treatment plants. And this is another one where packaging of a paint factory was turned into utilities to be used by painters. A third strategy related to circular economy related water resource management. This is another configuration. We selected important river watersheds within the region of interest of the program, and we identified companies among farmers, small and medium-sized enterprises, and bigger companies that had operations around this watershed. And we invited them to participate in the program. So this was another configuration. Here, we didn't have a supplier, an anchor company that invites its suppliers, as we had in the cleaner production part. We didn't mix them together as neighbors in the symbiosis configuration. Here, they were all located there around the same watershed. And we worked with them on their watershed planning in a systematic water system planning. And companies were normally used to have planning around their own water use, but they don't know about water use of their neighbors or their other partners in the watershed. And actually, as Colombia, we have, this is a hilly region. So what happens at the higher levels of the watershed affects the companies located at the lower sides of the watershed. So we did a whole workshop cycle on this, where they start to formulate projects on implementing water saving, water reuse programs along their watershed. And the scale of this was also smaller, but this was on critical resources, and it increments also resilience to water availability. So these are some outcomes there were projects on water regulation. So this was regenerating of planting trees around it, optimization of water contamination, conservation, and CO2 and CO2 emissions mitigation. Type of projects, as you can see, reforestation of watershed, restoration and conservation of wetlands. That's were part of the projects planned by the companies, and civil society reserves, collective projects. Here, about 20 companies participated in these programs. So the circular economy was the main strategy for these improvements, and how this was done. So now let's go a bit into learning by doing, where we used an 8-step workshop cycle. And these 8 steps are not just for granted. They are designed in a way that it's sufficiently long to establish relationships among the firms and to get this network collaboration about. And this mostly happens after a 4th or 5th workshop. Then with this type of companies, it really happens after this first, because companies are not used to collaborative approaches and to share more technical information about their production methods and also about their contamination. There are like cultural barriers to share this type of information. And in the workshop, we worked this about, and we provided them with tools to measure the material flows, and we advised them on the innovation and on the cost calculation. So really, the learning by doing worked as combines, and this is a bit explicit knowledge on tools. And we often shared this with them with the tacit knowledge on the application of the tools within the firm. So actually, we got very good relationship with them and very real data of their operational processes. So we combined conceptual learning with applied learning and experiences, and facilitating the sharing of this information among the firms. And that was what really improved a lot of trust and drove the action. Here, the facilitator didn't design the project. It were the people from the representatives of the firms who did it. We taught them how to fish. We didn't sell them the fish. And that's I think the main difference in this methodology. And then, of course, as a network, and I already explained this, we had different types of configurations. We had the anchor company and the suppliers, which is based on existing social capital, the existing commercial relationship between a supplier and a big client, and use this to bring the smaller companies in. We also had the symbiosis companies that already participated in the program, that were part of the community, and that due to this trust were able to develop and design and commit to more complex projects as part of their learning improvement process. And we had the configuration around the watershed, which is a common pool resource that company shares and where they usually don't have a systematic vision on. So this model of Redescar, we multiplied in different parts. First, it was multiplied also in Mexico, on the national scale, and recently we worked with the automotive cluster in the Querétaro region, where now about 350 firms, part of the automotive cluster, implement this methodology and design with very similar outcomes. Actually, our research shows how consistent the methodology is in different places. We also, of course, this Querétaro is a diversity in the Redescar companies were higher than in the automotive industry, which is higher level technology. We also applied the methodology in a much more less advanced context of Buenaventura, which is a port on the Pacific coast in Colombia. And this was much more rudimental development of the firms, but the methodology applied in a similar way. And we also applied that this Mass Meta is a program which is focused on agro-food chains. So the REDIS is a methodology of dissemination of circular economy practices among networks of firms, and to bring about to scale circular economy, adoption of circular economy practices in firms. And on this program, we have managed always a large database, and we have a lot of publications and done academic research on it. And this is the one I wanted to highlight a bit, because this summarizes a bit our learnings at least at the level of the dissemination mechanism. And this maybe is a bit a complex figure, but what it shows in the first place that dissemination has different phases, that companies pass through different phases when adopting new practices. So there is an awareness phase, there is a capacity building phase, there is an assessment phase, a formulation of a project, there is an implementation phase, and there is even a multiplication phase where they start. So this is knowing that it exists, knowing how it works, knowing how to do it, doing it, and multiplying it. And what we did, and we call this the shrinking pipeline, we see that companies in every phase, dynamics change. And some companies drop out and others continue their learning process. Because aside sustainability, companies have a lot of things. For example, in our program, one of the main reasons of dropout was change of personnel. We have here high turnover of personnel, especially it's in certain sectors. So there was a reason of dropout, capacity of being part of this program. And we see that in the more advanced phases, costs and benefits become less important. So we see that the dissemination process, the learning process, it connects also very much to trust and to the strategy or believing in why should we do this. So at the beginning, it's very cost efficiency focused, but as companies advance more, cost and benefit become less important, and it becomes more strategic. We see also that the consistent methodology helps to communicate, that communication is very important, and the communication also on an aggregated value. To see we used in this program, every year we had seminars to present accumulative results. We gave recognition to the companies, and this communication and bringing them all together, the 400 companies, 500 companies together, to see and celebrate their collective results and recognize these by environmental authorities, by community leaders is very important, because that helps to strengthen and to grow the community of practice. So now I want to come to the conclusions of my intervention. We are by maintaining the 40 minutes of the presentation. Why sustainable supply in Latin America? Because Latin America is a laboratory for sustainability and practices now in the coming decades. High needs and high opportunities. How to scale sustainable supply, that is the model of REDIS, that we represented the experience on how to connect through circular economy strategies in a method by learning by doing, through a network collaboration to reach out to group networks of firms and to scale this up. And in lessons that upscaling this requires collaboration. The triple helix was very effective. It's complex to manage, but well managed. It brings out incredibly learnings and also impacts, economic and sustainable environmental impacts. So thank you. This is what I wanted to share with you, and I'm looking forward to your questions and experiences and comments to this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Van Hoff, for that wonderful presentation. And thank you, audience, for your questions. I see that we piqued some interest. Joining us now, I gladly welcome my colleague, Miguel Hernandez, sustainability analyst here at EarthShift Global, who will be moderating today's question and answer session. Please take it away, Miguel.
Thanks, Sam. And also thank you, Bart, for such an interesting presentation. So the first question is related to the feedback that you've received. So what kind of feedback have you received from the program participants? Do they see this process as a valuable effort?
It's incredible. Actually, we when we started off this program, and thank you for the question, first of all, we had other names for it. And the companies started to call us Redescar. And that became their identity. And I guess this program lasted for 6 years, and it got its own identity. In the last 2 years, this program, the finance of this program has stopped, and they still call us Redescar. We still receive invitations of Redescar. So they see this as a collective identity, and feedback we get when we do follow up and get feedback, we get if we do inquiries, we get answers of 95%, 96%. So these people really feel part of a community, and that's still there, even when the program at the moment is not operational. Companies feel still part of it and call us as Redescars still. So I guess companies recognize a lot the value added, the capacity building, but also I think as this lasted and a critical mass was reached, they became convinced this goes beyond a project. We did a project. Was a project successful or not? Yes, it was, or no, it wasn't. No, this is more. They talk more about their experience of being part of Redescar than, okay, and we did this project. But the project outcome contributes to their identification with the program. But it's really, I think, about when I go back, about 70% of the firms reached phase 4, and in traditional programs, that's 20%. So that's I think how companies value this their participation.
Okay, thank you. And on that same line, do you have an idea of what percentage of the companies that participated on the program pursued further certification programs to accredit their environmental benefits?
No, I don't have that data. What I have is we connected this program with another program of the Environmental Authority on recognition, complementary to the Redescar recognition. This is a kind of certification of the Environmental Authority with somehow different types of criteria, evaluation criteria. And traditionally, about 90 firms a year participated in this other recognition program. And out of these 90 companies, half were participants of Redescar. So, of course, some of them do. I guess it relates a bit also to firm size. I think it's the more formal firms. Here in Redescar, we had all different types of firm size, and it were generally the more formal firms, bigger firms that applied for certification.
Okay, thank you. Here we have another one. As you mentioned, collaboration is key for the development of this program. What did you learn about convincing small and medium suppliers to provide environmental impact data directly to their customers?
I think that's that's a very interesting question. I think that's a big myth, at least here, that small and medium-sized companies don't have information and they don't want to supply it. And
Yeah.
that's partly true, but if the information, maybe it's not in their files, but you get it with them. We did these eco balances. We did the mass balances. We did material flow analysis. We reconstruct this with them. And of course, in many small and medium-sized firms, it's in the head of the people that work in the operation. So this is from a data recollection point of view, it's incredible. I've told you many times, Miguel, you could do this as learning by doing in life cycle analysis, because they don't have it in the data file. So if you ask them, they say, we don't have the data. But if you estimate the data together with them, it comes about. And of course, we had this philosophy of estimating. And of course, people are always like hesitant to estimate, because what if I make a wrong, and especially about sensitive data. But if they're the community of practice helps, because if they get confident, and they did, especially with the team of the university, and they felt okay, maybe it's a bit like this, and it's like this amount, and we reconstructed it, and they used this information to design their own project. So you really, that's the learning by doing. So data quality is rather good, and we did follow-up interviews, and we're always very responsive. So I think this is even a way of collecting data among supply chain, much more than sometimes the external traditional methods. Or okay, which data do you have? You can share. Maybe you do some testing. You do a site visit to see if the data really connects. But that's not easy, because in a company, if you go to the company the first time, people don't tell what their problems are. But here, companies have been 4 or 5 times. We have met them. They have shared already. And actually, the site visits we develop after the 4th or the 5th workshop. So they are very familiar with the circumstances, with the type of information. So the site visit that we do is very effective, because they already feel confident and start to advance their program. So it's a challenge, but it's possible. It's very well possible.
Okay. And what are the limitations of this Latin American experience for other regions?
We have done this I guess we haven't. We have done this in different sectors. Actually, we are applying it now with banks, obviously with a different context and a different content and so on. And it also starts to work. Outside Latin America, we haven't tested it yet. So for me, that's hard to say something. I can speculate something. That means this uses a generalized methodology, and it guides people to I guess in other regions, supply chain relationships might be more advanced. People might have more confidence. People might already share much more. So I think you could get it much further. I guess in Latin America, we face very low confidence among the firms, and our method is designed to create confidence and collaboration among the firms. I know in other contexts, collaboration might already be there, and then you can have a more technically oriented process, because companies already trust each other and might move faster and deeper. And those are mostly, some are advanced projects, but a lot are also very much low-hanging fruits. So I guess, but that's a speculation in other contexts. When there is more confidence and collaboration among suppliers and among clients and suppliers, you could emphasize more the technical part and go further on the innovations, more breakthrough innovations, more radical innovations than incremental improvements.
Okay, thank you. I think we have time for one last question, and this one is also related to one of the points you were mentioning. What lessons could other regions take and apply from Red Scar?
I think the learning by doing is key. I think in the world where we work, where we do, we separate everything out, and we actually sometimes we it's more easy to hire an external one than to do it yourself. And I guess learning by doing helps really to move the changes. I had the opportunity, that maybe relate to a personal experience. I had the opportunity to work for 2 years in an oil company here in Colombia, and not getting all this experience of learning by doing. And I tried to make changes within my team. I had a large team of people, over 200 people almost. And I tried to reach out to them and to bring about changes in the firm. And that was very hard, because in firms, people have little time. Everything is segmented, as in many organizations. Afterwards, I had the opportunity to work with the same people of the same company, but as an academic, and doing this type of learning by doing. And then I could, in 2 years, in a short time, advance the triple what I could do when I was the environmental manager there. So I really believe that triple helix and learning by doing really is very effective of bringing about changes. And it's not only about you have to get an understanding of the technical issues, but you also have to understand the learning aspect of this and the collaborative aspect of it. And I think as people, we are all afraid to change, some more than others. But if you are in a group where everyone starts to change and has similar insecurities as you, it's easier to run a marathon in a group than to run it on your own. And I guess that's one of the main learnings here. And sustainability hurts. It's like running a marathon. Running a marathon is not easy, and training for a marathon hurts. In our field where we work, adapting sustainability practices hurts. It's not easy. You have to train yourself for it, and you have to have a discipline to bring it about. And I think do that in a group is much more easy than doing that alone.
Okay.
Sounds like no pain, no gain is another way that.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Professor Van Hoof, and thank you, Miguel, for moderating. It's such a great presentation. As we wrap up this webinar, I'd just like to remind the listening audience you can stay up to date on all upcoming webinars and EarthShift Global happenings by subscribing to our monthly e-newsletter known as The Shift by visiting www.earthshiftglobal.com/newsletters. Thank you all for your time and attention, and we wish you a wonderful rest of your day. And again, thank you, Professor Van Hoof.